I'm under a train car with a rusted brake caliper wedged against my shoulder, and my headphones are playing something with too much bass for a Monday. Above me, on the platform, my foreman Lao Zhao is yelling about the schedule again. Same yelling as every Monday. I don't even flinch. Chinamo, you planning to sleep down there? Bolt seized, I shout back. Give me 2 minutes. 2 minutes is a lie. It's more like 5. The caliper doesn't want to move, so I brace the wrench, lean my whole body weight into it, and feel it finally give with a screech that vibrates up through my arm. That's the job. Not glamorous. Steady. I like steady. At 2:07 p.m., steady stops existing. The sky over the depot turns blue. Not sunset blue, not storm blue, a flat, electric blue, like someone dumped a bucket of paint across the whole ceiling of the world in one motion. The light doesn't stop at the concrete above me. It goes through it, through the train car, through my hand and the wrench still gripped in it. There's no pain. For 1 full second the world goes transparent, and I see things I have no business seeing, the stress lines running through the steel above my head. Hairline fractures nobody logged in any inspection report. Invisible tolerances in the metal like the whole depot suddenly got a blueprint stamped over it. Then my eyes work like eyes again. Something is different. Not the depot looks the same, dirty and half-lit. Something above me is screaming, and it isn't Lao Zhao's normal Monday scream. I roll out from under the car into the inspection pit and look up. Lao Zhao is standing at the edge of the pit. Half a minute ago, he was pressing a torch against a pipe joint. Now his skin is cast iron, seamed at the joints like something poured and cooled. His arms end in 2 ropes of blue flame instead of hands. Where his eyes used to be, there are 2 narrow slits of white-hot metal, and they're pointed at me. Lao Zhao. He doesn't answer with words. He answers by dropping into the pit. I am not a fighter. I want to say that plainly, because it matters. I've never thrown a punch that landed anywhere useful, and the last physical fight I was in, I lost to my cousin when I was 11. So when 800 pounds of molten-eyed foreman lands 2 meters from me, my body does the only thing it knows how to do. It runs. I go under the next car. Then the next. My shoulder clips a support strut, and I feel it tear something, but there's no time to check what. Behind me, metal groans. Lao Zhao is pulling himself along the rails, too big now to duck the way I can. And that difference in size is the only reason I'm still alive 30 seconds in. There's a stretch of open floor between the cars and the switch mechanism at the end of the line. If I go for it, I'm exposed for 4-5 seconds. If I don't go for it, I'm cornered against a dead-end wall with a man who used to complain about overtime and now breathes fire. I go for it. I don't remember deciding to grab the wrench tighter. I just have it in my hand when I hit the switch mechanism, and some instinct, not a plan. An instinct tells me to jam it into the gap where the points meet the rail and throw my weight against it like a lever. It should not work. The switch mechanism isn't designed to be forced like that, and I am not strong enough to force industrial steel with a hand tool and panic. It works anyway. The metal bends exactly where I need it to bend, not where metal usually wants to bend where I need it. The points shift, the gap under the rail opens wider than it should, and for 1 absurd second I understand, the way you understand a math problem right before you finish it, exactly how much force is in every centimeter of steel around me. Lao Zhao's flame hand comes down on a barricade I don't even remember building. Scrap rail, a maintenance ladder, wire mesh, thrown together in the 4 seconds it took him to cross the gap. It should collapse under 1 hit from something that strong. It holds. Not barely holds. Holds like it was engineered by someone with 20 years in structural design, instead of slapped together by a panicking sleazer with a wrench. Lao Zhao's own weight does the rest. He's too heavy, too clumsy in his new body, and the gap I forced open in the switch is exactly wide enough and exactly angled enough that his next step doesn't land on rail. It lands on nothing. He goes down into the excavated section of track bed we'd been repairing all week, and he doesn't come back up, just a wet, furious howling sound from somewhere below ground level, and the clang of him trying to climb metal that keeps shifting under his new, too heavy hands. I don't wait to see if he gets out. Topside, the depot doesn't look like a depot anymore. There's a hole in the concrete roof the size of a bus, sky blue light still bleeding through it even though the flash itself is gone. 2 security guards are on the ground, not moving. A third one is on his knees, both hands pressed over his own face, screaming something that isn't words. 10 meters away, A big man in a torn security jacket stands with both fists wrapped in actual fire, not glowing skin. Fire. Orange and rolling off his knuckles like it belongs there, and he puts one guard through a support column without seeming to try very hard. The column cracks. The guard doesn't get up. I watched this for maybe 2 seconds. Long enough to understand something simple and unfair. Whatever happened to that man made him a weapon instantly. Whatever happened to me made me survive one lucky trick with a wrench. Then blue text floats up in the corner of my vision, pale and thin, like a subtitle only I can see. Skill awakened. Engineering rank. Undetermined anomaly last contact. Adjustable wrench tool. Class. Craft. I read it twice. It doesn't explain anything. It just confirms that whatever just happened to the entire sky is now permanent, and that my share of it is a rank the system itself doesn't know how to grade. Somewhere across the depot floor, the fire-fisted man turns, sees me standing there doing nothing useful, and loses interest immediately. I'm not worth his time. I don't blame him. 2 kilometers away, in a district Chin Mo hasn't reached yet, a different man is not thinking about wrenches at all. He used to run a hardware supply warehouse mid-tier, decent margins, the kind of business that survives on volume. When the sky went blue, he had a fistful of steel rebar in his hand, midway through loading a delivery truck. Now his skin doesn't reflect light anymore. It refracts it, in jagged planes, the way a broken window does. He calls himself nothing yet. He hasn't needed a name for 3 minutes of existence. He picks a shard the size of a kitchen knife off his own forearm, and it doesn't hurt when it comes free, and he throws it at the first moving thing he sees. And it goes through a car door like the door isn't there. He is not thinking about Chin Mo. He has never heard of Chin Mo. But some version of him is out there right now, and eventually the 2 of them are going to meet, and one of them is going to build something to stop the other. I climb out through the roof gap, because the stairwell is blocked with debris and I don't have a better option. The city outside is not the city from this morning. Smoke is already going up in 3 different places I can see from the depot roof. Somewhere south, something roars, not an animal I recognize, not a machine, something in between, and the sound rolls off the buildings and doesn't stop for a long 5 seconds. My phone has no signal. I try anyway, 3 times, standing on broken concrete with the wrench still in my hand, because some part of my brain refuses to let go of it. Mom lives 40 minutes from here by metro, on a normal day. Younger brother Chin How should be walking home from school right about now. Same route he always takes, past the market, past the bridge. 40 minutes by metro doesn't mean anything anymore. The metro isn't running. I don't know if the bridge is still standing. I don't know if normal day is a category that still exists anywhere in this city. I put the wrench through my belt loop, the way I always do when my hands need to be free, and I start walking in the direction of home, because it's the only decision that makes any sense at all. Behind me, from somewhere below the depot floor, Lao Zhao is still screaming, not words anymore. Just a long metallic note of rage that I can hear for 3 blocks before it finally fades under the noise of the rest of the city falling apart. The city teaches me the rules in the first 20 minutes, and it doesn't do it gently. Rule 1. Whatever was in your hands when the sky broke decides what you get. I watch a delivery driver near an overturned van, still gripping the crowbar he used to pry the doors, and his forearms have gone the color and texture of the crowbar itself, gray, dense, immovable. He punches through a car window to pull a screaming woman out, and the glass doesn't cut him at all. Rule 2. The bigger the thing you held, the bigger what you got. A soldier 3 blocks down still has his service rifle slung across a body that's turned half-transparent, moving faster than anything that size should move. Muzzle flash outlining him each time he fires at something I can't see around the corner. Whatever hit him hit hard. Rule 3. And this one I learn about myself specifically. Household objects make you a joke. A wrench doesn't turn you into a weapon. It turns you into someone who's very good at fixing things nobody has time to fix anymore. I keep walking. Every block closer to Mom's apartment costs me time I don't have and gives me information I don't want. A collapsed overpass here. A burning kiosk there. 3 people standing perfectly still in the middle of an intersection, just staring up at the sky, like it might explain itself if they wait long enough. I hear the girl before I see her. Not screaming worse than screaming. The flat, controlled sound of someone who's already accepted this might be the end and is trying to think her way out of it anyway. I follow it into a narrow gap between a shuttered pharmacy and an apartment stairwell, and there she is, back against a locked security gate. Both hands out in front of her like she's reading something in the air, two men closing in from either side. The men used to be nothing special. Now one of them crackles faintly at the fingertips every time he flexes his hand, small blue sparks jumping between his knuckles. The other one's skin has gone the dull gray-brown of wet concrete, and he moves like it too slow, but solid, the kind of solid that doesn't care what hits it. "Give us the bag," Sparkhand says, "and maybe we don't touch you." "It's empty," the girl says. "I checked it twice. There's nothing." "She's lying," Concrete Skin says, not even looking at her. He's looking at the bag. I can feel it's lying. I don't know what makes me step into the gap instead of walking past it. Maybe it's that she sounds like someone I'd want to help me. If the positions were reversed, maybe I just don't have the energy left today to watch one more thing happen to someone who doesn't deserve it. "Hey," I say, which is not a plan. It's just the only word that comes out. Both men turn. Sparkhands laughs first, an ugly, delighted sound. "Look at this. Guy's got a wrench." He flexes his fingers, and the sparks jump brighter. "You gonna fix something, wrench guy?" There's a car at the mouth of the alley, had already popped from whatever happened here before I arrived. Battery sitting exposed and intact. There's a coil of bare copper wire hanging off the pharmacy's blown security shutter. There's a puddle of standing water from a burst pipe, right in the gap the two men would have to cross to reach either of us. I see all three things, and I see, for one clean second, exactly how they connect. It's the same feeling as the switch mechanism, not a plan I build step by step. More like a picture that's already finished, and I'm just tracing it with my hands. "Buy me 30 seconds, I say to the girl, not looking at her, already moving toward the car. "With what?" "Talking. You're good at that. I heard you a minute ago." She doesn't argue. She starts telling Sparkhands his bag theory is wrong and his friend's power is probably useless against anything that isn't touching him directly. Not true, as far as I know. But it's enough to make Concrete Skin bristle and slow his approach by 2 full seconds while he decides whether to be offended. 2 seconds is enough. I strip the battery terminal, run the copper wire across the puddle's edge, and jam the loose end into the shutter's metal frame, a crude, ugly circuit that shouldn't work as cleanly as it does. Current running exactly where I need it to run and nowhere I don't. Like the copper is choosing its own path under my hands instead of the other way around. "Now," I say, and shove the girl sideways out of the gap. Sparkhand steps into the puddle first. His own power turns against him. The water carries the battery's charge straight up through both boots. And for a man made of electricity, an outside current doesn't feel like a tickle. He goes down convulsing, sparks jumping wild and directionless off his skin. Concrete Skin is heavier, slower to react, and he's 3 steps behind. That's the part one didn't plan for. The gap between the two of them means my circuit only has one victim in it when it fires, and now I'm standing 4 feet from an angry, dense, unshocked man with nothing left in my hands but a wrench. He swings. I don't dodge it cleanly. I get clipped across the shoulder, the same one I already tore back at the depot, and the pain white lights across my vision for a second. Then something hits the puddle behind him. The girl, I don't even know her name, yet has thrown a chunk of broken curbstone into the water at exactly the second I'm scrambling backward, and Concrete Skin's back foot lands right in it. He's slower to shock, but not immune, and the jolt buys me the half second I need to get the wrench up and drive it, hard, into the joint where his elbow used to bend like flesh and now bends like stone. It's not a killing blow. It's barely a real blow at all. But something in that joint gives a crack of grinding stone, and he drops the arm, snarling, and that's enough. He grabs Sparkhands, still twitching, and hauls him back the way they came, shouting something about coming back with more people. "You're not a fighter," the girl says, once they're gone, watching me shake the pain out of my hand. "No, you don't dodge. You don't hit hard. You just..." She gestures at the wire, the battery, the whole ugly circuit still faintly smoking in the puddle. "You get ready before the fight starts." Something like that. "Lin Wan," she says, which I realize is her name only because she's holding a hand out to shake, then thinks better of it with the wrench still in my grip. I read things. Touch them, know what they are, what they'll do. Doesn't help much in a fight. Tells me things 2 seconds before they matter, usually. 2 seconds mattered a lot just now. She almost smiles at that. I want to keep walking. Every minute standing in this alley is a minute my mother and my brother are somewhere in this city without me. And I don't know yet if that's a problem I can still fix or one that already happened without me. Linwon doesn't have anywhere to go. Her building's entrance is blocked. Her roommate isn't answering, and the men who just left have friends. I need to get to my family, I tell her. Across the river. I can't. I'm not asking you to carry me, she says. I'm asking which way you're walking, because it's probably safer than whichever way I pick alone. It costs me time I don't have to say yes. It costs me nothing at all to realize I would have said yes anyway. This way, I say, and we start moving together, back toward the river, back toward the last place I know my mother was this morning. We're 4 blocks further when a stranger jogs past us going the other direction, breathless, and shouts something that isn't meant for us specifically, but lands on me like it was. Don't go near the Yunlong Towers. Some iron gangs shaking down the whole block. They've got a big one, calls himself the Rust King, the Yunlong Towers. That's not just near my mother's building. That's my mother's building. The Yunlong Towers used to be unremarkable 6 identical concrete blocks, a courtyard nobody maintained, a security gate that never fully closed. Now there's a truck rammed sideways across the entrance, and a dozen men and women in matched armbands standing around it like it's a checkpoint they built themselves and now own. At the center of them is a man built like the truck itself. Where skin should be, there's plated iron, seamed and rusted at every joint like he's been standing in rain for years instead of hours. His arms end in fists the size of my head. Someone shouts his name across the courtyard, Xiao Wang, and it comes with the kind of respect people only give you after you've heard enough of them. Building fee, he's saying to an old man clutching a bag of groceries. Everyone pays the building fee now. Food, meds, anything useful. You don't pay, you don't sleep here tonight. Linwon grabs my sleeve before I can do anything stupid. That's not a bad day fight, she says quietly. That's a war, and we're not soldiers. My mother's on the 4th floor. She looks at the courtyard, at the truck, at the 12 armbands, and doesn't argue with me again. She just asks, what have you got? I check my pockets like the answer might have changed since the last time I checked. Wrench. What's left of the copper wire, maybe 4 meters. A pocket knife. Nothing that beats 12 people and an Iron Man. The side entrance, I say. Maintenance door, off the courtyard. If we're fast, we don't need to beat them. We need to not be seen. The maintenance door is unlocked, because nobody thinks to guard a door that leads to a boiler room instead of an apartment. We slip through, up the service stairs, past the smell of old paint and rust, and I count floors under my breath until we hit 4. The apartment door is still locked. That's the first good sign I've had all day. Mom. I don't whisper it. I can't help myself. Mom, it's me. The chain rattles. The door cracks open, and there she is, dust in her hair. A kitchen knife held in a grip that tells me she's never held one like a weapon before today and has been holding it that way for hours anyway. Chin Moshe doesn't finish my name before she's pulling me inside, and behind her, folded into the corner between the couch and the wall, is Chin Hao. My brother doesn't stand up. He doesn't say anything. He's staring at his own hands like they belong to someone else, and small things around him, a pen, a coaster, a fork left on the coffee table, are drifting an inch off their surfaces and back down, over and over, like his fear keeps leaking out of him whether he wants it to or not. He's been like that since it happened, Mom says. I don't know what's wrong with him. Nothing's wrong with him, I say, because it's the only thing I can offer right now. He's just scared, same as everyone. Lin Wan crouches near him, doesn't touch him, just says quietly, whatever you're doing with your hands, it's not going to hurt anyone. I can tell that much just standing here. Chin Hao doesn't answer, but the drifting fork slows down, settles, stays still. Downstairs, a door splinters. Someone screams that they don't have the fee. Xiao Wang's voice rolls up through the stairwell, unbothered, patient in the worst way, the patience of someone with all the time in the world and none of it for you. We don't have time to wait him out. The stairwell down is a bad option. It puts us in the courtyard, in the open, in front of 12 armbands and 1 Iron Man. The elevator's dead. The only other way out is the same maintenance stairs we came up, which loop past the ground floor utility room and out through a side gate. It should be clean. It isn't. 2 of Xiao Wang's people are posted right at the base of the stairs, checking exactly the route I picked because it's the obvious one, and by the time I realize that, we're already 3 steps from being seen. Wire, I say to Lin Wan, low and fast. Same trick as the alley, bigger. With what water? There's a mop bucket sitting half full outside the utility room door because someone was cleaning up flood damage this morning in a world that no longer has mornings like that. It's not much. It has to be enough. I strip the last of the copper wire, run it from the bucket to the fuse box on the wall. Old building, old wiring. More current behind that panel than it should legally have, and loop the whole mess across the doorway threshold like a tripwire nobody would ever notice unless they were looking for it. Go loud, I tell Lin Wan. Make them come to us. She doesn't ask what that means. She kicks a fire extinguisher down the stairwell, and it clatters and bangs its way down 2 full flights. And both guards below spin toward the noise and step forward into the doorway without thinking, the way anyone does when a sound demands attention faster than a threat does. The current finds them both. For an ordinary person, it would kill them outright. These aren't ordinary people anymore. One of them has skin gone half metallic at the joints, absorbing some of the shock, and he only goes down convulsing instead of dying. The other one screams and drops, and doesn't get back up in time to matter. It buys us 4 seconds, maybe 5. It is not enough seconds, because Xiao Wang himself is already turning toward the noise, and Xiao Wang does not move like a man who needs to be lured anywhere. He comes through the stairwell door like the door isn't structurally load-bearing, which it apparently wasn't, not against him. Mom shoves Qin Hao behind her. Lin Wan's already backing toward the side gate, pulling at my sleeve, telling me with her eyes that this is the part where we run. I don't have a plan for Xiao Wang. I have a wrench, a dead circuit already spent on 2 lesser men, and about 1.5 seconds before he closes the distance. Run, I tell my mother. Side gate. Now, don't wait for me. She doesn't want to. She goes anyway, because Qin Hao's hand is in hers, and that decides it for her faster than anything I could say. I don't run at Xiao Wang. I run past him, close enough that his backhand catches nothing but air where I should have been 0.5 seconds earlier. And I feel the wind of it against my collar like something I'll be feeling in my sleep for a while. He's fast for something built like a building. Faster than I planned for. Lin Wan's already outside, at the gate, and I clear it 0.5 step ahead of a fist that puts a crack straight through the concrete post beside my head instead of through my skull. We don't stop. We don't look back to see if he's following, because the sound behind us heavy, deliberate, unhurried footsteps. Like he already knows exactly where we're going and doesn't need to sprint to get there eventually tells us everything we need to know. 2 blocks later, the footsteps stop, or we just can't hear them anymore over our own breathing. I don't know which, and I don't slow down long enough to find out. We don't stop running until the towers are out of sight behind 3 separate turns, and even then, Mom is the one who finally makes us stop, hand pressed to a stitch in her side, breathing like she hasn't run since school. We can't go back there, she says. Ever. I know. Where do we go? I think about it for exactly as long as it takes to remember something from years ago, a school trip, an old industrial district near the edge of the city, half abandoned even before the world ended. A machinery plant that shut down when I was still a kid. Big buildings. Thick walls. Far enough from downtown that it wasn't worth anyone's first thought today. There's an old factory complex, west side. I say. Nobody's fought over it yet. Nobody wants it yet. You're sure? I'm not sure of anything today, including whether Xiao Wang remembers my face now the way I'll remember his. But it's the only direction that isn't backward. It's the best bad option we've got, I say, and we start walking west, 4 of us now, into a part of the city that used to just be somewhere nobody bothered to go. It takes most of what's left of the afternoon to reach it. The gate is chained but rusted through in one corner, easy enough to pull wide with bare hands. Inside, the main floor is exactly as abandoned as I remembered: dead machinery, broken skylights, years of dust nobody swept. Except for the light. Somewhere deeper in, past the second row of dead assembly lines, a single work lamp is burning, steady and electric, in a building that shouldn't have power running to it at all. Someone got here before us. I put myself between the light and my family before anyone else moves, which is a stupid instinct for a man whose only weapon is a wrench, but it's the instinct I have. Stay back, I say low. The light doesn't move toward us. A voice does, from somewhere behind the third assembly line, flat and unbothered, like he's been watching us stumble through his front door for the last 2 minutes and was in no hurry to announce it. If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. You made enough noise coming in to wake half the district. A man steps into the lamp's edge. Older than me, maybe mid-40s, built lean rather than big. a combat knife sheathed at his hip in a way that says he's used it for more than opening boxes. His eyes have a strange stillness to them, and when he moves faster and smoother than a man his age should, like his whole body decided today to stop apologizing for its limits. Ming-Kuei, he says, not as an introduction, more like a fact he's stating for the record. This is my building now. Was empty this morning. I claimed it. We're not here to fight over it, I say. We just need somewhere the fires haven't reached yet. He looks past me at Mom, at Qin Hao pressed into her side, at Lin Wan standing with her arms crossed, and her eyes doing that thing where she's reading the room instead of looking at it. Family, he says. It isn't a question. Fine. East corner's got a working door. Don't touch anything on this side. The east corner turns out to be a converted break room, a few cots someone dragged in from a supply closet, a space heater running off a car battery, blankets that smell like machine oil but are dry and warm. Mom gets Qin Hao settled on one of the cots, and for the first time since the sky broke, he closes his eyes and actually sleeps, small objects around him finally, mercifully still. Lin Wan sits near the doorway, watching Ming-Kuei the way she watches everything, like she's cataloging what it might do before deciding what to think of it. Ming-Kuei doesn't sleep. He's cleaning the knife, an unnecessary ritual for a blade that's already clean, and he doesn't look up when he finally talks to me. You're the one from the wrench story. What story? News doesn't exist anymore, but people still talk. Guy who dropped a foreman into a pit using a switch mechanism instead of a fist. Word travels fast when it's the only entertainment left. I don't know what to say to that, so I don't say anything. Engineering type, he says. Craft skill. Low tier, everyone will tell you. I've got augmented reflexes and endurance from a bayonet I was holding when the sky broke. Boring. Honestly, soldier gets a soldier's power, no surprises there. But at least it's a power that shows up when I punch something. You don't think mine does. I think you got lucky once. He sets the knife down. I've seen a lot of lucky people die on their second try. I don't argue with him. Arguing with a stranger holding a knife in a building he's already claimed when my family is asleep 10 feet away seems like a bad use of the little energy I have left. Instead, I ask, what do you need? Not to trust me. Just what would actually convince you I'm not dead weight. He studies me for a long moment. Whatever he sees, it makes him almost smile. The way you smile at someone who asked exactly the wrong-shaped question and doesn't know it yet. There's a pile of scrap by the loading dock, he says. 10 minutes. Make something useful. Not impressive. Useful. The scrap pile is mostly junk, even by junk standards: bent conduit, a dead fluorescent fixture, a spool of thin copper wire someone left behind, shards of a broken window. I crouch in front of it and do the thing I've apparently started doing without deciding to. I look at it, and the pieces stop being separate objects and start being one unfinished shape. 10 minutes later, I've got a tripwire alarm rigged across the loading dock side entrance, copper wire at ankle height, tension just enough that a footstep snaps it, tied to the fluorescent fixture's broken glass, suspended above the door frame so that anything breaking the wire brings a small avalanche of noise down with it. Crude. Loud. Nothing that would slow down anyone dangerous. Ming-Kuei walks it, sets it off on purpose, watches the glass rain down exactly where I aimed it to fall, away from the door, away from anyone standing in it, but loud enough to wake the whole building. Huh, he says, which from him apparently counts as high praise. That's not a weapon, I say, before he can decide it isn't enough. I know that, but it means nobody gets to the room where my family's sleeping without every one of us knowing 30 seconds before they arrive. He's quiet for a second. Then, there's a supply run I need to make. Medical district, 3 blocks east, before someone else strips it clean. I'm not doing it alone anymore. Lost the last 2 people I tried that with. You want in, you're in for 1 run. After that, we talk about anything longer term. 1 run. 1 run, he agrees. And Qin Mo, if something out there is faster than your tricks, don't expect me to carry you back. Wasn't planning on needing carried. He almost smiles again. And this time it looks less like doubt and more like something he hasn't let himself feel. Yet today, the smallest possible flicker of relief at not being entirely alone in whatever this city is turning into. Before we leave, I check on Qin Hao one more time. He's still asleep, but his hand is twitching in small motions, and the pen on the crate beside his cot lifts an inch, hovers, settles back down, over and over, quiet and involuntary. Like his power runs even when he isn't awake to be afraid of it. Linwan is watching him too. He's going to need more than sleep, she says quietly. I know. Not tonight, though. Tonight, he just needs the building to still be standing in the morning. I look toward the loading dock, where Meng Kuei is already checking a spare knife against his belt, waiting. Then let's make sure it is, I say, and follow him out into whatever's left of the night. The medical district is 3 blocks of looted pharmacies and 1 warehouse that, according to Meng Kuei, still has an intact supply room nobody's found, yet a building supply depot that used to stock fire safety equipment and construction materials for the district's renovation project. We go in through a loading bay instead of the front, because the front already has a scorch mark across it that neither of us wants to investigate. In, grab what we can carry, out, Meng Kuei says. 10 minutes, no longer. We get 4 minutes before the light changes. It's not sunrise. It's the light bending wrong across a stack of shelving near the back wall, refracting into small rainbows on the floor from a source that shouldn't be casting rainbows at all. I clock it half a second before Meng Kuei does, which is the only reason either of us is still standing when the first shard comes through the air where his head was. The thing that used to be a man steps out from behind the shelving, and there's nothing left in him that reads as human except the general shape. His skin has gone into jagged planes, catching light like a broken window standing upright, and there's a hole in his forearm where he's just pulled a fresh shard free, already reaching for the next one. Warehouse is mine, he says, and his voice comes out wrong, like it's echoing off glass before it reaches his mouth. Your stock. Meng Kuei's already moving, knife out, augmented speed carrying him sideways out of the glassman's throw line, but the second shard changes direction mid-flight, curving toward him instead of where he was aiming to be, and it opens a line across his ribs before he can fully clear it. He goes down hard behind a shelf, cursing, one hand pressed to his side. He's fast, Meng Kuei grits out. Faster than he should be. I don't have a plan. I have a supply room full of construction materials and 11 seconds before the next shard finds one of us. There's a fire safety shield leaning against the wall heavy gauge, meant to stop debris on a work site, and a length of pipe from a dismantled scaffold rack beside it. I don't decide to combine them so much as I see, in the half second I have to look, that the shield's curve and the pipe's length are already the answer to a question I haven't finished asking. I grab both, and I'm still bolting the pipe to the shield's frame with a scavenged C-clamp when the next shard comes for me. I get the shield up half a beat late. It catches the glass instead of deflecting it clean, and the impact rings through my arm hard enough that I nearly drop the whole assembly. Chinmo, that's not a weapon. That's a shield. Working on it. I strip a length of rebar off a bundle by the door, snap it to length against my knee, and jam it down the pipe's bore. It's crude. It's not what a crossbow should look like, and the tension I rig with a torn ratchet strap is nowhere close to what an engineer would call safe. But when I pull the release, the rebar leaves the pipe fast enough to punch a hole through a stack of drywall 6 meters away. The glassman is not 6 meters away. He's 3, and closing, and my first shot goes wide, because I'm still calibrating the strap tension by feel instead of by any measurement that makes sense. The second shot goes wide too. He's faster than the weapon, faster than my aim, and Meng Kuei is bleeding out on the floor behind a shelf that isn't going to hold much longer against another direct hit. I'm out of rebar for the launcher and out of time to reload it a third time anyway. What I have left is an abandoned demolition hammer, a real one, heavy duty, meant for breaking concrete, sitting exactly where someone left it mid-job before the sky broke. The glassman's whole structure hums faintly when he moves, a frequency I can feel more than hear, the same way I felt the stress lines in the depot roof. It's not random. It's a resonance, tuned to whatever made him this shape in the first place, and every hum tells me exactly where the structure is thinnest. I don't have time to build anything elegant. I strip the hammer's stock motor casing, cross 2 wires that shouldn't touch, and jury-rig the whole mechanism to fire at a frequency close enough to his own hum that it doesn't need to be perfect, just close enough to fight itself against. Cover your ears, I tell Meng Kuei, which is useless advice for a man holding his own ribs together, and I swing. The hammer connects with the glassman's shoulder, and instead of just impact, there's a shriek of vibration that runs through his entire structure at once. Hairline cracks spread from the contact point across his chest, his arms, his throat, and for 1 second, he looks less like a man and more like a windshield right before it goes. He swings at me anyway, desperate, and it lands. I feel ribs bend that shouldn't bend, and I go down hard against the shelving, vision white at the edges. But he's already coming apart. The next breath he tries to take cracks something vital, and he collapses into a spray of glass that used to be a person, and then he's just glass, scattered across the concrete floor, catching light from nowhere in particular. Manhwa drags himself upright against the shelf, one hand still pressed to his ribs, watching me try to do the same thing and fail twice before I manage it. "You built a crossbow out of a fire shield," he says, like he's still deciding whether to believe what he just watched. "In under 2 minutes. Missed twice. You hit the third time. That's the part that matters." He looks at the glass scattered across the floor, something shifting behind his eyes. "I've seen soldiers freeze up worse than that on their first real contact. You didn't freeze. You just kept building until something worked." Among the shattered glass, there's a piece different from the rest, dense, faintly warm, pulsing with something that isn't light exactly, more like the ghost of the hum the whole structure had. A core. I've heard the word secondhand, whispered by strangers on the street, like a rumor that whatever made these people what they are leaves something behind when they die. And if you're the kind of person who can use it, it changes you. I don't know if I'm the kind of person who can use it. I pick it up anyway. The moment my hand closes around it, something reaches back. It isn't pain. Not at first. It's pressure, like my skull is a container being filled past its rated capacity, structure by structure, line by line, faster than I can process any of it. I see schematics that aren't mine, weapons I've never built, tolerances and stress points folded into my vision all at once, and somewhere under all of it, my own mind trying to keep up and failing. I don't remember hitting the floor. I come back to Manhwa's hand gripping my shoulder, his voice sharper than I've heard it, saying my name like it's the third or fourth time he said it. There's blood on my face, my own, from my eyes, dried into 2 dark tracks down my cheeks, and 20 minutes have passed according to the light through the loading bay, though it feels like no time at all. "Don't ever do that again without telling me first," he says, and there's something in his voice that isn't just anger. It's closer to fear on my behalf, which is new from him. Didn't know it would do that. That's exactly why you tell someone first. I sit up slowly, and the world looks different, not blurred by the blood, sharper. Details in the collapsed shelving I hadn't noticed before. Stress points in the loading bay's ceiling structure visible the way the depots had been in that first second of the flash. Except now it doesn't fade after a second. It stays. "This isn't a gift," I say, mostly to myself, wiping blood off my face with the back of my hand. "It's a debt, and the interest is compounding every time I collect." Manhwa doesn't answer that right away. He just looks at me for a long moment, the crossbow rig still lying in the wreckage, the shattered glass, the blood on my face, and something in his expression finally settles into something closer to respect than doubt. "You're not what I expected," he says. "I expected a lucky amateur. I didn't expect someone who'd keep building weapons with his ribs half broken until one of them worked." Does that mean the one supply run just became something longer term? He almost smiles, wincing as the motion pulls at his ribs. "Let's get out of here before something else decides to test that theory. Then we'll talk." We load what we can carry, bandages, antiseptic, a case of ration bars nobody's found yet, and head back toward the factory with the sky starting to gray toward morning behind us. Both of us walking slower than we came, both of us carrying more than we planned to. 3 days pass before anyone calls the factory anything other than the factory. It's Lin Wan who starts it, half joking, watching me weld a hinge back onto a salvage door with a torch I built from spare gas lines and a cracked ignition coil. "You've turned this place into a workshop," she says. "Might as well call it that." The name sticks because nobody has a better one, and because by the end of the 3rd day, it stopped being an abandoned factory and started being something else entirely. Walls reinforced where they were weak, a working perimeter alarm strung off salvaged wire, a water collection system running off the old roof drains. None of it happens because I'm strong. All of it happens because there's finally enough hands to do the work and enough reason to believe the work matters. The reason arrives on the 4th day, dragging a cart with a wheel that squeaks badly enough to announce her from 2 streets away. "I heard there's a place that doesn't ask what you're worth before it lets you in," the woman says. When Manhwa meets her at the gate with a knife, he doesn't quite point at her. She's thin, tired in a way that goes deeper than one bad week. A medical tourniquet still looped around one wrist, even though there's nothing bleeding to justify it. He Ling. I was a paramedic. Still am, I think, whatever that's worth now. What's your skill? Meng Kuei asks, flat, testing. She hesitates, then presses 2 fingers to a scrape on her own forearm, and the skin knits shut in front of us slow, effortful, clearly costing her something to do it. Healing. Weak version. Works better on other people than on myself, which feels like a joke someone's playing on me. Meng Kuei looks at me. I look at the cart she's dragging, half full of scavenged medical supplies. She clearly risked her life gathering instead of hoarding for herself. She's in, I say, before he can decide otherwise. Rule we're building here: nobody gets judged by how hard they hit. He doesn't argue. I don't think he wants to, not really. I think some part of him has been waiting for someone to say that rule out loud, so he doesn't have to be the one holding the whole moral weight of this place alone. The boy comes 2 days after that, and he doesn't walk in so much as get walked in, flanked by 2 strangers holding him by the arms like he might combust. He does, in fact, almost combust. Small, sudden bursts of raw kinetic force keep flaring off him at random, not aimed, not controlled, just discharging whenever his fear crosses some threshold he can't predict. One burst has already put a hole through a wall 3 streets over, which is the reason the 2 strangers are so eager to hand him off to anyone willing to take the risk. Xiao Yu, one of them, says. Found him alone. Nobody else would take him. Figured you people might, since you're apparently letting anyone in. The boy won't look at anyone. He's maybe 15, and his hands are shaking, and every few seconds a small shockwave ripples off him hard enough to rattle loose bolts on the nearby shelving. He's dangerous, Meng Kuei says. Low, not unkindly, just honest. He's scared, I say. Those aren't the same thing, even if they look the same from outside. I spend the better part of an evening watching Xiao Yu from a careful distance before I try anything. The bursts aren't random the way they look. There's a pattern, a half-second of stillness right before each one, like his body is winding a spring it doesn't know how to release gently. That half-second is enough to build around. I take a length of flexible conduit, salvaged wiring, a small capacitor scavenged from a dead radio, and build something that isn't a weapon at all, a bracelet, snug at the wrist, designed to draw off a fraction of that pre-burst charge and bleed it out slowly through the conduit instead of letting it detonate all at once. It takes 2 failed versions before the third one holds. The first melts the capacitor in under a minute. The second works for almost an hour before a burst overloads it entirely, and Xiao Yu flinches so hard at the small explosion on his own wrist that he nearly triggers a real one out of pure panic. I'm sorry, I tell him, meaning it, resetting the components with hands that are more tired than they should be for something this small. Third tries the one that's going to work. I promise you that much. He doesn't answer, but he holds his wrist out anyway, which is its own kind of answer. The third version holds. Not perfectly, I can feel, watching him over the following days, that it's buying him control rather than giving it to him outright, drawing the charge down to something survivable instead of eliminating it. But the wall stays intact. Nobody else gets hurt. And on the 5th day, for the first time since he arrived, Xiao Yu says something that isn't a whispered apology. Does it get easier? He asks, not looking at me, watching the bracelet like it might betray him at any second. The bracelet buys you time, I say. It doesn't fix anything by itself, but time's usually enough if you use it right. That night, with the family asleep, with He Ling cataloging supplies by lamplight and Meng Kuei walking the perimeter one more circuit before he'll let himself rest, I sit down with Lin Wan and do the math nobody's wanted to say out loud yet. We don't have enough materials to reinforce every wall and arm everyone who's here, I say. Not both. Not this month. So which? Walls first. If we can't keep people out, the weapons don't matter. If we can, we've got time to build the weapons properly instead of rushing them. She doesn't argue the logic. She just says, quietly, you realize that's a choice that could get someone killed if you're wrong. I know. Good, she says. Means you're taking it seriously enough. Before the week is out, 3 more rules get written on a salvaged whiteboard by the main door, in Meng Kuei's blunt handwriting, because his is more legible than mine. No resource gets spent arming 1 person if it could protect 5. Nobody gets thrown out for what the Flash gave them, only for what they choose to do with it. Everyone learns a trade. This place doesn't run on 1 hero. Xiao Yu reads them twice, silent, the bracelet still on his wrist. He doesn't say anything about them. But the next morning, he's the first one up, sitting near the scrap pile, watching how I sort salvage into useful piles, close enough that it isn't an accident. Chin Hao watches all of it from the edges, the way he's watched everything since the tower's present, quiet, never quite in the room, even when his body is standing in it. I find him on the 6th evening sitting near the scrap pile after everyone else has gone to sleep, turning a loose gear over in his hands without touching it directly, letting it hover an inch above his palm instead. You're getting better at that, I say, sitting down across from him. A week ago it was just things falling off tables. It's not better. It's just quieter. He doesn't look up. I keep thinking about Mom's face at the towers. When that man's fist went through the wall next to your head. I think about that too. You didn't freeze. I didn't have time to freeze. That's different from not being scared. I pick up a bent washer from the pile, turn it over once, set it back down. Being scared isn't the problem. How? It's what you do with your hands while you're scared that matters. He's quiet for a while. The gear's still hovering, small and steady now instead of shaking. Can you teach me? He finally asks. Not the fighting. The part where you look at something and already know what it wants to become. That's not something I taught myself. It just happened. Then teach me the part before that. The part where you pick something up and actually look at it, instead of just being scared of what it might do. It's the longest sentence he's said since the flash. I don't make a show of noticing that. I just nod and pick up a second gear and hand it to him. Start here, I say. Not with your power. With your hands. The rest comes later, if it comes at all, but this part, I can actually teach. For the first time in 6 days, he almost smiles. The peace doesn't last past the following evening. Meng Kuei comes back from a perimeter scout with his jaw set in a way I've learned to read as bad news before he's even said a word. Rust King's people are asking questions 3 blocks east, he says. Where the wrench guy who humiliated him at the towers ended up. Somebody talked. How long do we have? Days. Maybe less. He looks around at the walls we've reinforced, the alarm wire we've strung, the handful of people who've started calling this place something more than a hiding spot. Whatever we've built here, it's about to get tested for real. Nobody sleeps, well, once you know exactly how many days you have left before someone tries to kill you. Meng Kuei gave it a range days, maybe less, and the whole workshop has been running on that uncertainty ever since, which turns out to be a better motivator than any deadline I could have invented. We spend the first 2 days on walls. The east wall was always the weak point, a loading bay door that doesn't lock properly, wide enough to drive a truck through if anyone with a truck decided to try. I stripped the hinges off 3 dead vehicles in the lot outside and weld them into a reinforcing lattice across the frame. And Meng Kuei teaches 4 people who've never held a welding torch how to hold one without losing a finger. You're not building a fortress, he tells them, watching one of the new arrivals, a wiry man named Bo who used to run a noodle stall, fumble a bead across a seam. You're buying seconds. Seconds is all any of this is ever going to buy you. Use them well when they come. Bo's weld holds, mostly. It's not clean, but Meng Kuei claps him on the shoulder anyway, and something in Bo's posture straightens that wasn't straight a minute earlier. I spend the 3rd day on traps, and this is where the real argument starts. Lethal, Meng Kuei says, watching me rig a tension-triggered rebar spike across the narrow service alley on the north side. It needs to be lethal, or it's not worth the materials. It needs to stop someone, not necessarily kill them. Those are the same thing when the someone is one of Xiao Wang's people, and the alternative is them getting to the break room where your family sleeps. He Ling, sorting bandages nearby, doesn't look up, but her voice carries anyway. Not everyone following Xiao Wang chose to be there. Some of them are just scared people who picked the strongest crowd because the alternative was dying alone. Scared people still swing knives, Meng Kuei says. So do soldiers who never wanted the war, she says back, not raising her voice, which somehow makes it land harder. I patched enough of them up before the sky broke to know the difference between someone who wants to hurt you and someone who's too afraid not to follow orders. Meng Kuei doesn't have a clean answer for that. Neither do I. I finished the trap with a design that will break a leg instead of a spine, and neither of them tells me I'm wrong, but neither of them tells me I'm right either. The disagreement doesn't resolve. It just goes quiet, waiting for a moment when it'll matter more than it does today. Training the rest of the workshop takes longer than building anything. Most of the 20-some people who've drifted in over the past week have never held a weapon that wasn't a kitchen knife. And half of them have flash-given abilities too weak or too strange to matter in a straight fight, a woman who can make her own skin slightly sticky. A man who can taste when food's gone bad from 3 feet away. Small useless gifts that would have been party tricks in the old world and are just as useless in this one. I don't try to make them fighters. I make them useful instead. Sticky Skin Woman gets a pair of gloves reinforced with the same rebar tension mechanism from the crossbow rig, turning her light grip into something that can hold a barricade shut against real pressure. Taste Testing Man gets stationed near the food stores, where his one skill actually matters more than anyone's fists. Bo the Noodle Stall Welder gets a proper torch and a job repairing whatever breaks, which turns out to be a lot every single day. You're doing what you did with the boy's bracelet, Lin Wan observes, watching me fit a brace onto Sticky Skin Woman's forearm. Building around what people already are instead of trying to make them into something else. Turns out that's most of the job. Most people would have just handed her a spear and told her to figure it out. Most people would get her killed that way. The first test comes on the 4th evening, and it isn't the real thing. Meng Kuei recognizes that before anyone else does, standing at the gate with his knife loose in his hand, watching 3 figures approach from the east and then stop well short of the perimeter. Scouts, he says, not a raid. They're counting heads, checking the walls, seeing what we've got before Xiao Wang commits anything real. We let them look. There's no version of hiding that works better than letting them see exactly enough to make an attack expensive. The reinforced gate, the visible traps at the alley mouths. People moving with purpose instead of panic. One of the 3 gets bold or stupid and tries the north alley anyway, testing whether the trap I built there is real or bluff. It's real. The rebar spike catches him across the calf instead of anywhere worse, and he goes down screaming, and his 2 companions drag him off without finishing whatever they came to do. It's not a victory. It's a bruise on both sides, one of them limping home with a leg that'll take weeks to heal right, and the workshop's location and defenses now confirmed instead of rumored. The loss comes the next morning, small and sudden the way losses in this world tend to be. A supply run for water purification tablets, 3 streets north, run by 2 people who've been here less than a week. One of them doesn't come back. Nobody saw what got him. Meng Kuei finds what's left near the corner of a collapsed pharmacy and doesn't say much about it beyond confirming it wasn't Xiao Wang's people. City's not just him, he says, grim, cleaning his knife afterward with more force than the job requires. Everyone forgets that when they're this focused on one threat, there's 100 smaller ones circling every day. We're too busy watching the big one. The workshop holds a short, quiet gathering that evening. No ceremony, just people standing together near the loading bay for a few minutes, saying the dead man's name once, out loud. So it doesn't just disappear into the noise of everything else that's happened this month. Xiaoyu stands near the back, the bracelet steady on his wrist, and doesn't say anything. But he doesn't flinch either, which feels like its own kind of progress. It's a trader passing through 2 days later, one of the rare few still moving goods between districts, trading information as often as supplies. Who brings the rumor that makes even Meng Kuei go still? You want to worry about something bigger than the Rust King, the trader says, unloading a crate of batteries in exchange for 2 days' worth of food. There's something moving through the industrial district south of here. People are calling him the Smith. Word is he doesn't fight for territory or food. He collects people. Engineers, mechanics, anyone whose flash gift runs toward building instead of hitting. Collects them how? I ask, already not liking the shape of the answer before it arrives. However he wants to. Nobody said no to him and lived long enough to explain what happens after. Meng Kuei and I trade a look across the crate of batteries, and neither of us says anything about it out loud. Not with Xiaoyu and Bo and half the workshop close enough to hear. But I file the name away somewhere I don't examine too closely. The Smith, collecting builders, and hope, without much confidence, that it stays a rumor for a long time yet. The real attack comes on the 6th night. No scouts this time. No testing, just the perimeter alarm screaming all at once from 3 directions. And Meng Kuei's voice cutting through the dark before I'm even fully off my cot. Full force. They're not probing anymore. This is everyone Xiao Wang's got. The alarm wire on the east side goes first, then the north, then the alley trap on the far side snaps almost simultaneously, 3 separate signals converging into one conclusion. This isn't 3 scouts anymore. This is everyone. I'm off the cot and moving before I've fully processed what's happening, grabbing the toolkit I've kept assembled by the door for exactly this reason, and Meng Kuei's already at the gate, knife out. shouting positions to people who've only had a week to learn what a position even means. "Mom, get out of the back room, bar the door," I shout, and she doesn't argue, doesn't ask questions, just grabs my brother and moves. Xiao Wang's people come through the loading bay gate first, and the reinforced hinges I welded hold for exactly as long as it takes for something the size of Xiao Wang himself to hit it twice. The second hit tears the whole frame loose from the wall, and then he's standing in the gap where a door used to be, iron-plated and patient. 20 of his people spreading out behind him into the workshop floor. "Should have paid the fee," he says, and his voice carries across the whole open space like he's not even raising it. Now I take the building, and everyone in it becomes the fee. Bo, the noodle stall welder, is closest to the gate, and to his credit, he doesn't run. He swings the reinforcing brace he's holding, connects with one of the raiders, and gets thrown 10 feet for his effort. He gets back up. That matters more than the hit did. The generator-fed gauntlet I've been building for 3 days finally gets its first real test, and I regret, immediately, not having more time to test it properly. It's strapped across my right forearm, wired into a portable battery bank charged off the workshop's main generator, designed to deliver a directed, controllable version of the same shock trick I've been using since the alley with Lin Wan, except now aimed, focused, meant to actually stop something Xiao Wang size instead of just delaying 2 lesser men. I get close enough to use it on one of his lieutenants, a woman whose skin has gone a dull, conductive gray, and it works exactly as designed. Dropping her mid-stride like the current simply switches her body off. Then I try it on Xiao Wang himself, and the gauntlet doesn't even get to discharge before the battery bank overloads, sparking uselessly against my forearm. The whole rig going dead at the worst possible second. He's 3 feet away when it dies. I don't have a backup plan for that distance. His fist catches my shoulder instead of my head, because I twist half a second too late instead of not at all, and it still throws me across 10 feet of concrete floor hard enough that the world goes white and ringing for a moment I can't afford to spend. Meng Kuei's there before Xiao Wang can follow up, knife raking across the exposed seam at his elbow, augmented speed the only thing keeping him alive at that range. It buys me the moment I need to get back to my feet, gauntlet dead weight on my arm. No weapon left except the one thing I actually know how to use under pressure: observation. I watch him move. Really watch. The way I watched the glassman's resonance. The way I watched the switch mechanism bend exactly where I needed it to. Xiao Wang's plating shifts when he twists his torso, and there's a half-second gap at the center of his chest, low, where the iron doesn't quite meet. Not armor there, something else. Something that pulses faintly the way the glassman's core had pulsed after death, except this one's still alive and beating. The heart of him isn't iron. The armor's a shell built around something organic, something that has to stay intact for the rest of him to keep functioning. His chest, I shout to Meng Kuei, scrambling for the dead gauntlet's battery pack, ripping the casing open with bare hands. There's a gap, center mass, low. That's not armor. That's the actual him under it. Little busy. Meng Kuei shouts back, ducking a blow that puts a crater in the floor where he'd been standing. I don't have time to rebuild the gauntlet properly. What I have is the battery cells themselves, raw, unshielded, and about 4 seconds before Xiao Wang finishes whatever he's doing to Meng Kuei, I strip the cells bare, twist them into a crude direct contact rig with wire I tear straight off the dead alarm system. And it's ugly, and it's dangerous, and there's a real chance it just kills me the second I touch it to anything conductive. I don't have a better option. I close the distance while he's focused on Meng Kuei, and I drive the raw cells directly into that gap in his plating, center mass, low, exactly where the seam doesn't meet. The current doesn't have armor to fight through this time. It goes straight into whatever's actually keeping him alive under all that iron. And Xiao Wang doesn't roar this time. He makes a sound that's smaller, more human, more afraid, and goes down like something structural finally gave way inside him. He doesn't get back up. The fight around us doesn't stop just because their leader's down. If anything, some of his people fight harder, panicked, unmoored without him directing them. But something shifts in the balance the moment word spreads across the floor that the Rust King is on his knees, and within another few minutes the raid breaks apart into retreat. His surviving people dragging each other back out through the wrecked gate instead of pressing the attack. Bo's alive, bruised badly but standing. The sticky-gloved woman held her section of wall the entire fight, exactly the way the reinforced grip was designed to let her. Nobody in the workshop died tonight, which feels less like a victory and more like a debt we're going to have to pay eventually, given everything else this city's shown me about how debts work. Xiao Wang is still breathing, on the floor near the wrecked gate, plating cracked open where the current went in, too weak to move. Finish it, Meng Kuei says, standing over him, knife already in hand. There's blood on him that isn't his Xiao Wang's, from the fight, and blood that is his, from a cut across his forearm he hasn't had time to notice yet. He comes back from this. He brings everyone he's got left and burns this place to the ground out of spite alone. I've seen it before. Mercy gets people killed. He's not a threat like this, I say. Not anymore. He's a threat the second he heals. Then we don't let him heal into an enemy. We let him heal into someone who owes us his life and knows it. I step between the knife and the man on the ground, which is either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've done since the depot pit. We said nobody gets judged for what they were given, only for what they do with it. That rule was for scared strangers looking for shelter, not for the man who tried to burn this place down twice. Then maybe the rule needs to survive its hardest test, or it was never a real rule to begin with. Meng Kuei doesn't lower the knife right away. He looks at me for a long moment, at the exhaustion and the conviction both fighting for space on my face, and something in his expression shifts, not agreement, not yet, but a willingness to let the disagreement stand without ending it with a blade. Your call, he finally says, sheathing the knife with more force than necessary. Your rule, your risk. But if he turns on us because of this, that's on you, not on me. I know. Xiao Wang looks up at me from the floor, plating still cracked, breath coming in short pulls. And there's nothing left in his eyes of the man who stood in front of the Yunlong Towers collecting a fee from people too scared to refuse him. Why? He manages, not quite a question, more like he genuinely doesn't have a framework for what's happening. Because you're going to work for this place now, I say. Under watch. Earning your place instead of taking it. That's the offer. The other option was already on the table, and my friend was ready to use it. He doesn't answer. He just closes his eyes, and something in his posture, the same posture that stood over a terrified old man demanding a building fee, finally breaks, not from the shock damage, but from something closer to relief at being given any option at all besides dying on this floor. Later, once the wounded are patched and the wrecked gate is at least barricaded enough to hold until morning, I sit against the wall near where He Ling is finishing up on Meng Kuei's arm, and I let myself feel, for the first time since the alarm went off, exactly how close all of this came to going differently. You gambled the whole place on a rule, Meng Kuei says, not looking up from his own bandaged forearm. I know. It worked this time. I know that too. He's quiet for a moment, flexing his hand, testing the bandage's grip. For what it's worth, I've served under commanders who wouldn't have made that call. Most of them are dead now, and so are the people who trusted them. He glances toward where Xiao Wang's being kept, guarded, alive. Doesn't mean you're right. Just means you might be onto something I stopped believing in a long time ago. Outside, the sky's starting to gray toward morning again, and somewhere across the ruined gate, the city keeps burning in whatever direction the fires haven't reached, yet smaller now, from here, than it felt an hour ago, when a man built like a building was 3 feet from ending everything I'd built since the towers. 3 days after the raid, the workshop looks less like a battlefield and more like a place people actually live. The wrecked gate's been rebuilt heavier than before, Bo's bruises have faded to yellow-green, and Xiao Wang's still weak. Still watched by at least 2 people at all times, has been put to work hauling scrap under Meng Kuei's unblinking supervision. It's the quietest morning we've had since the sky broke, and I let myself sit with it longer than I probably should, on an overturned crate near the east wall, watching Qin Hao practice lifting a wrench an inch off the ground without touching it. He's gotten better. Not dramatically, the wrench still wobbles, still drops sooner than he wants it to, but he's gotten better, and more importantly, he stopped flinching every time it moves on its own. Try the whole toolbox next, I say, half joking. One thing at a time, he says, which is the first joke I've heard out of him since before the flash, and it lands harder than it should for something so small. He sets the wrench down, actually smiles at me, and for exactly one morning, it feels like something in this world might be allowed to just be good. The messenger arrives at midday, and I know before he says a single word that the morning's over. He's young, nervous, wearing a clean set of clothes that mark him as someone who serves a household with resources instead of someone scavenging like the rest of us. He stops well short of the gate, hands visibly empty, and waits for Meng Kuei to wave him closer before he speaks. Lord Ba sends word, he says, and something about the practiced formality of it makes my skin crawl before I even understand why. He's heard of your victory over the Rust King. He's impressed. He extends an offer. What kind of offer? Meng Kuei says, flat. The messenger recites it like something memorized, word for word, probably delivered the same way to a dozen other places before this one. Your fighters join his elite guard, with all the honors that come with it. Your craftsmen, healers, and other useful hands join his workforce, housed and fed under his protection. In exchange, this place becomes his, and you answer to him. And if we say no? The messenger's composure slips, just slightly. Lord Ba doesn't ask twice. He said to tell you the Rust King thought he could stand alone too. He leaves without waiting for an answer, which tells me the answer was never really the point of the visit. The point was making sure we understood the shape of the threat before it arrives in person. I call everyone together that evening, not just Meng Kuei and Lin Wan and He Ling, but Bo, the sticky-gloved woman whose name I've learned is Wei, Xiaoyu. Even Xiao Wang standing at the edge under guard, silent, watching with an expression I can't fully read yet. I've heard of Lord Ba, He Ling says, before I can even frame the question properly. Before the flash, he ran security for 3 different corporate compounds. After I treated someone who escaped his territory. Said the workforce isn't paid, isn't fed enough to matter. Said they collar the ones with useful gifts so they can't run. Collars, Lin Wan repeats. Like animals. Like property, He Ling says. That's not an exaggeration on my part. That's what she told me, word for word, before she died of infection because nobody in his territory was allowed to spend supplies healing someone who wasn't worth keeping. The room goes quiet in a way that isn't peaceful this time. We could take the offer, Bo says, and it's not cowardice in his voice, just exhaustion, the kind that makes even a bad option look tempting after enough weeks of nothing but bad options. We survive. Isn't that the whole point of any of this? Surviving as property isn't surviving, Wei says, quiet but certain. It's just dying slower, with extra steps. Easy for you to say when you're not the one he'd put a collar on. Bo snaps back, and it's the first real crack I've seen in him since the raid. Fear finally finding an outlet. He'd put one on me too, Wei says, not backing down. My gift's useless in a fight. I'd be exactly the kind of person he collars. I let them argue for a while before I say anything, because I think the argument itself matters more than whatever I could add to it. This isn't a decision I want to make alone. Standing in front of everyone, the way Lord Ba clearly expects some single figurehead to make it. This isn't my call, I finally say, when the room's worn itself down enough to listen. Not just mine. Everyone here's going to live with whatever we decide, so everyone here gets a real say. We take it as close to a vote as a room full of exhausted, scared people can manage. It isn't unanimous. Bo doesn't raise his hand for resistance, and nobody blames him for it, given what he's already survived to get here. But the room, as a whole, chooses to fight rather than kneel, and something in that collective choice feels sturdier than anything I could have decided on my own in a back room at midnight. Xiao Wang speaks for the first time since the messenger left, his voice still rough from the damage 3 nights ago. I know his fortress, he says. Knew it, before I was stupid enough to think I could build something bigger on my own instead of joining him. There's a way in that isn't the front gate. Meng Kuei's eyes narrow. Why would you help us? Because he'd have collared me the same as anyone else, the day I stopped being useful to him, Xiao Wang says. And because this is the first place that's given me a reason to be useful instead of feared. He looks at me directly for the first time since the fight. You could have let him kill me. You didn't. I don't forget debts like that. It's not trust. Not yet, not fully. But it's the first honest thing I've heard him say, and in a world this short on honesty, that counts for more than it should. That night, before anyone sleeps, Mom finds me checking the gate reinforcements one more time. The same nervous habit I've apparently picked up permanently since the raid. You're going into his fortress, she says. Not a question. Someone has to see what we're actually up against before we commit everyone to fighting it blind. And it has to be you. It has to be someone who can look at a structure and understand how it works from the inside. That's not a skill anyone else here has. I finally stop checking the gate and look at her properly. I'll have Meng Kuei with me. I'm not doing anything stupid alone. She doesn't look reassured. She looks like a woman who spent 3 weeks watching her son walk toward exactly the kind of danger she used to warn him about crossing the street for, and has run out of ways to say no that will actually change anything. Come back, she finally says, which is the only version of permission she has left to give. I will. Across the yard, Chin Hao is watching us from the doorway of the break room, wrench still loosely gripped in one hand, not floating this time, just held. The way anyone holds a tool they're getting used to. Teach me more when you're back, he calls out. Not quite a request, more like a demand dressed up as one. When I'm back, I agree, and hope, for his sake as much as mine, that it's a promise I actually get to keep. Xiao Wang's directions get us within sight of the fortress by mid-morning, a converted logistics compound. Walls built from shipping containers stacked and welded 3 high. The kind of structure that used to move freight and now moves people instead, in whatever direction Lord Ba decides they go. Side entrance, Xiao Wang told us, before we left, tracing the route in the dirt with a stick since none of U.S. trust paper records that could be found on us. Craftsmen and specialists go in through the maintenance gate on the south face. Nobody guards it as hard, because nobody expects a threat to walk in looking useful instead of dangerous. That's the plan. I go in looking useful. Meng Kuei goes in looking like my hired muscle, which he objects to on principle and agrees to anyway, because it's the only version of the plan that gets us both through the same gate. The guard at the maintenance gate barely looks at me twice. Craftsman, I say, which is true enough it doesn't feel like lying. Heard Lord Ba's compound needs someone who can keep the infrastructure running. I fix what other people can't. Everyone says that, the guard mutters, but waves us through anyway, too bored or too used to petitioners like me to bother with real scrutiny. Foreman will sort you if you're actually worth keeping. If not, you're back out this gate by nightfall. We're in. The compound is bigger inside than it looked from outside, container walls forming corridors between open work yards. And it takes less than 10 minutes of walking through it to understand exactly what He Ling described. There are people working every yard we pass sorting scrap, hauling water, tending small garden plots grown in cracked concrete, and every single one of them has a metal collar locked around their throat, dull gray, with a small indicator light that pulses faintly, steady, like a heartbeat that isn't theirs to control. One woman near the water station has her sleeves rolled up, and I catch a glimpse of what looks like burn scarring circling both wrists, old enough to have healed wrong. She doesn't look up as we pass. Nobody looks up as we pass. Looking up, I realize after the 3rd or 4th flat, downcast face, is something that gets noticed here, and getting noticed is not something anyone wants. Meng Kuei's jaw is tight enough that I can see the muscle working from where I'm walking beside him. He doesn't say anything. There's nothing to say that wouldn't get us both collared inside the hour. The foreman who sorts me is a broad man with a clipboard and no collar of his own, which tells me everything about where he sits in this hierarchy before he even opens his mouth. What's your specialty? He asks, not really looking up from the clipboard. Mechanical systems. Generators, mostly. I can keep old equipment running past when it should have died. That gets his attention. Finally, clipboard lowering an inch. We've got a generator problem. Main 1 feeds the whole compound's power, including the collar network. Been running past its rated life for months. Keeps threatening to fail. If you can actually fix that instead of just talking about it, you've got a place here. It's exactly the opening I was hoping for, and I hate how easily it arrives. Because it means this compound's entire control system runs on one piece of aging infrastructure and nobody's bothered to properly maintain a single point of failure holding an entire population's obedience in place. Show me, I say. The generator room is deeper in the compound than I expected, guarded but not heavily, 2 men who look bored rather than alert. The kind of guard duty assigned to a threat nobody actually believes is coming. The generator itself is exactly what the foreman described. Old, overworked, patched together with parts that don't quite match the original design. Feeding out through a junction box into cabling that runs, according to the crude diagram bolted to the wall beside it, directly to what's labeled simply as collar grid, sectors 1 to 6. I don't touch anything yet. I spend the better part of an hour actually fixing small, real problems, a loose connection here, a worn bearing there, because the fastest way to earn the freedom to keep working unsupervised is to be visibly, undeniably good at the cover story. It works. By the time the light shifts toward evening, The two board guards have stopped watching me closely enough to notice what else I'm doing with my hands. Building the device has to happen in pieces, hidden inside legitimate repairs, because I can't risk being caught with something that looks like sabotage instead of maintenance. I strip a length of coiled wire from a damaged section of cabling I've deliberately damaged myself, wind it around a housing salvage from a burned-out relay, and shape the whole thing into something compact enough to hide inside my tool bag, a device designed to send one sharp, disruptive pulse through the generator's output the moment it's triggered, enough to overload every collar on the network simultaneously without frying the wearers underneath them. I've run the numbers twice in my head, checked the generator's actual output against what I remember from other electrical systems I've handled since the flash, and I'm as confident as I can be that it'll disable the collars without killing anyone wearing one. As confident as I can be isn't the same as certain, and that gap sits heavy in my chest the whole time I'm building it. Manhwa finds me an hour before we're due to slip back out, tension written into every line of his posture. "We need to move," he says, low. Foreman's asking why the new craftsman's still in the generator room after his repairs should have been done 2 hours ago. "I need 3 more minutes. "You don't have 3 more minutes. He's right, and I know he's right. And I finished the last connection anyway because stopping now means the device is useless and the whole infiltration was for nothing. I get it wired into the junction box, disguised as legitimate maintenance work, set to trigger remotely once we're clear, and the workshop's assault begins outside. Footsteps in the corridor outside the generator room more than 2, moving with purpose instead of the bored shuffle of routine patrol. "They're on to us," Manhwa says, already moving toward the room's second exit, a maintenance hatch I'd clocked earlier without mentioning, because some habits from the depot never really left me. The hatch is tight, barely wide enough for both of us, and it dumps us into a narrow gap between 2 stacked containers instead of anywhere near the south gate we came in through. Voices behind us, sharper now, someone shouting the word sabotage loud enough that whatever cover story I had left is officially gone. Manhwa doesn't hesitate. He grabs a length of loose chain hanging off the nearest container, swings it hard into a stack of empty drums beside the corridor we just left, and the resulting clatter sends at least 2 of the search parties sprinting in the wrong direction entirely, chasing a sound instead of us. "Move," he says, and we do, threading through the gap between containers faster than I thought either of us could manage on legs shaking from adrenaline, and somehow barely, loudly. With at least one shouted alarm still ringing behind us, we clear the outer wall through a gap in the container stacking that no proper gate was ever meant to be. We don't stop running until the compound silhouette is small behind us, and even then we don't stop walking fast, checking behind us every few dozen meters for pursuit that, mercifully, doesn't come. "That was too close," Manhwa says, once he's got enough breath back to say anything at all. "I know. The device is in. Wired into the junction box. Should trigger clean when we send the signal." I check my hands, still faintly trembling, and force them steady through sheer will. If I calculated the output right, it takes every collar in the compound offline the same second, without hurting anyone wearing one. If, I agree, because there's no honest way to promise more than that. Xiao Wang is waiting near the edge of the industrial district when we finally circle back toward the workshop, exactly where he said he'd be, watching the horizon in the direction of Lord Ba's fortress with an expression I still can't fully read. "You're both alive," he says. "That's better than I expected, honestly." "Comforting," Manhwa mutters. "The device is planted," I tell him. "We trigger it the moment the workshop's people move on the fortress from outside. Collars go down, and whoever's under them gets a chance to decide whose side they're actually on." Xiao Wang nods slowly, something settling into his expression that looks almost like resolve. "Then it's time to tell the others. Tomorrow, we don't send scouts or send messages. Tomorrow, we hit him with everything we've got, from both sides at once. Above us, the sky's going dark toward another night neither side of this fight is likely to sleep through, and somewhere behind those container walls, hundreds of people are wearing collars that, if I've built this right, are about to stop working all at once. We move before dawn, because dawn is when the compound's shift change leaves the fewest guards fully alert. And because I need the dark for the last piece of the plan, the part 1 haven't told anyone about yet except Manhwa. "You're gonna get yourself killed sneaking back in there," he says, watching me strip sheet metal into thin plates behind the workshop's east wall. 3 hours before the assault is supposed to start. Not sneaking in, sneaking under. I finish wiring the last plate to the crude electromagnet coil I built from motor windings scavenged off a dead pump. If this works the way I think it does, it means we don't have to beat Lord Boss' strength directly. We just have to make sure his own weight works against him at exactly the right moment. And if it doesn't work, then I improvise, same as always. He doesn't look reassured. He hands me a second knife anyway, the closest thing to a blessing he's willing to give. Getting the plates into the compound's central yard, the open space, Xiao Wang swears Lord Ba favors for any confrontation. Since he likes room to use his full strength takes the last hour of darkness, and every scrap of stealth training Meng Kuei's tried to drill into me over the past weeks. I bury 4 plates shallow beneath the loose gravel, wire them in series back to a hand trigger I keep looped around my wrist, and slip back out through the same gap in the container wall we used to escape 3 nights ago, heart hammering the entire way. By the time the sky starts to gray, I'm back with the others, and the device I planted in the generator room 3 nights ago is finally ready to be used for what it was actually built for. The assault begins the way Meng Kuei planned it, loud, visible, deliberately overwhelming at the main gate, drawing every guard Lord Ba has toward the obvious threat, while the real damage happens somewhere he isn't looking. Xiao Wang leads the first wave through the front, his cracked plating still healing, but his presence alone enough to rattle guards who remember exactly what he used to be capable of. Wei's reinforced grip holds a barricade shut against a counterpush long enough for a second wave to flank around the container stacks. Bo, of all people, keeps 3 separate fires from spreading into the workshop's supply carts, moving faster than I've ever seen him move. Welding torch abandoned for a length of pipe, he swings like he's finally decided fear isn't going to be the only thing he's capable of anymore. I trigger the device the moment the fighting's loud enough to cover the sound of the generator room failing. Every collar in the compound goes dark at once. It isn't silent. There's a rolling wave of gasps and cries across the yards as hundreds of people feel a weight lift off their throats that some of them have worn for months, and in the confusion that follows, the compound's actual guards, the ones who volunteered for this life, instead of being forced into it, suddenly find themselves badly, catastrophically outnumbered by people who have absolutely nothing left to lose. It isn't a clean uprising. Some of the collared workers are too weak, too broken by months of forced labor, to do more than collapse where they stand, finally free enough to feel exactly how exhausted they are. Others turn on the nearest guard with a ferocity that makes even Meng Kuei pause mid-fight to watch it happen. Meng Kuei takes the worst of it in the central corridor, where Lord Ba's actual elite guard a half-dozen fighters with real combat gifts. Not just numbers make their stand instead of joining the general collapse. I find him after the fact, not during it, which is its own kind of guilt I'll have to sit with later. By the time I reach the corridor, he's down against a container wall, one arm hanging wrong, a gash across his side that he will spend the next hour fighting to close properly, and 3 of the elite guard down around him, which tells me exactly how much it cost him to get to this point still breathing. Go, he manages, when he sees me hesitate. I'll hold here. Central yard, that's where he'll be. Go. Xiao Wang is the one who buys the rest of us the final stretch of ground toward the central yard, throwing himself between 2 of Lord Ba's remaining guards and the retreating flank of workers trying to get clear of the fighting. He goes down under both of them at once, plating giving way in 3 places, and the last I see of him before the crowd closes around the fight is his arm, still moving, still fighting, refusing to stop even as it's clear he's not walking away from this one. I don't have time to go back for him. I hate that fact with everything I have, and I keep moving anyway, because stopping means the sacrifice means nothing. Lord Ba is waiting in the central yard exactly where Xiao Wang said he would be, and he's exactly as big as the rumors promised, not iron-plated like Xiao Wang, but dense with raw physical force. The kind of gift that doesn't need cleverness because it's never had to develop any. The engineer, he says, almost amused, cracking his knuckles with a sound like gravel shifting. I was told you were clever. Clever doesn't mean anything against this. He's right, in the most literal sense. When he closes the distance, I don't dodge cleanly, I can't. Not against something that fast, and that strong, and the first blow that lands takes me off my feet entirely, ribs screaming. The world tilting sideways hard enough that for a second I can't tell which direction is up. I get my hand on the trigger anyway, wrist still looped with the wire I buried hours ago, and I drag myself backward across the exact patch of gravel where 4 plates are waiting under the surface. Close enough that when he follows, and he does follow, confident, unhurried, the way a much stronger opponent always follows his own weight brings him directly over the trap. I trigger it the second he's centered over the plates. The electromagnetic pulse isn't strong enough to hurt him. It was never designed to. It's designed to lock onto anything ferrous in his gear, his boots, the metal-reinforced gauntlets he's wearing, and for one critical half-second, his own weight and the sudden dead pull of the plates conspire against each other, planting both his feet flat and immovable exactly when he needs them mobile most. He doesn't fall. He's too strong to fall from something that small. But he stumbles, off balance for the first time since this fight started, and that stumble is the only opening I'm ever going to get. I don't have a weapon built for this moment. I have the second knife Meng Kuei handed me hours ago, and I use it the only way that matters, not aimed at his chest or his throat, but driven hard into the back of the knee that's locked flat against the trapped plate, where even someone his size has a joint that isn't reinforced by whatever the flash gave him. He goes down. Not defeated, just down, off balance. Human enough in that one moment for the crowd of freed workers now flooding into the yard to see exactly what they're seeing. The man who's owned their lives for months, finally on the ground. He doesn't stay down long enough for me to press the advantage further. By the time I'm back on my feet, ribs screaming, Lord Ba is already scrambling clear of the trapped plates, favoring the leg I cut. Retreating through a gap in his own collapsing compound rather than staying to finish a fight he's just watched turn against him. I let him go. I don't have the strength left to chase him, and around us. The compound isn't falling because of anything I'm still doing, it's falling because hundreds of people who spent months collared and silent are done being either. The aftermath takes hours to settle into something that looks like an ending. Healing works on Meng Kuei until her hands are shaking from the effort, and when she finally straightens up, exhausted, she tells me flatly that he'll live. But it'll be weeks before he's using that arm properly again. Xiao Wang, against every expectation, is found alive under the wreckage of the fight that took him down barely, badly, plating cracked in more places than intact but alive. And He Ling doesn't ask questions about priority before she starts working on him too. Freed workers scatter in every direction once the fighting stops, some toward homes they haven't seen in months, some staying close to the only people who just proved they'd fight for strangers instead of just themselves. I find a quiet corner of the ruined compound once the worst of the triage is done, and Linwan finds me there not long after, settling down beside me without asking permission. The way she started doing since the alley. "You're shaking," she says. "Adrenaline. It'll pass." "That's not what I mean." She looks at the wrecked containers, the collars scattered dark and dead across the yard, the exhausted, freed crowd still processing what just happened to their entire world in the space of one morning. A month ago you were hiding under a train car. Now you just took down someone strong enough to run a small kingdom on fear alone. I didn't beat him with strength. I know. That's my point. She leans back against the container wall, closing her eyes for a moment, letting herself feel the exhaustion instead of fighting it. You've come further than you've let yourself notice. Might be worth noticing it, just for tonight, before the next thing finds us. I don't have an answer for that right away. I just sit there, ribs aching, hands still faintly trembling, watching the freed compound slowly, painfully start to become something other than a cage, and let myself. For one quiet stretch of morning, believe her. 6 weeks pass, and the workshop stops being a hiding place and becomes something closer to a town. Word of Lord Ba's fall spreads faster than anything else has this year, and it brings people dozens at first, then more. Refugees and survivors, and the occasional flash-gifted drifter looking for somewhere that judges people by what they build instead of what they can break. We run out of room inside the original factory floor within the first 2 weeks and start reinforcing the outbuildings, the old warehouse next door, a section of the rail yard nobody else wanted. Meng Kuei's arm heals slower than he'd like, but he's back on his feet, training a small standing group of fighters instead of doing everything himself. Xiao Wang, healed and humbled in equal measure, has become something between a foreman and a cautionary tale, The kind of story new arrivals tell each other in hushed voices. The Rust King, tamed by a rule instead of a knife. Xiao Yu's bracelet has needed exactly one repair in 6 weeks, which he mentions with a pride that makes something in my chest ache in the best possible way. We call ourselves the workshop now, officially, painted crudely across the reinforced gate in letters Bo insisted on making as large as the paint would allow. It's Lin Wan who feels it first. 3 days before anything actually happens, a wrongness she can't fully articulate. Standing near the main gate one evening with her hand resting flat against the gatepost, like she's listening to something the rest of US can't hear. Something's coming, she says. Not people. Not exactly. Something that used to be a machine, or still partly is. Helpful, Meng Kuei mutters, only half joking. It's the best I've got. Whatever it is, it's big, and it's not hurrying, because it doesn't think it needs to. He arrives on the morning of the 3rd day, and he doesn't knock, and he doesn't need to. Because the reinforced gate we've spent 2 months making nearly impenetrable simply stops mattering the moment he reaches it. He walks through the gate the way a man walks through a curtain, not breaking it dramatically, just displacing it, metal folding aside like it forgot it was supposed to resist anything. Underneath a long coat, his body isn't entirely flesh anymore. Segments of dark, articulated plating run along both arms, fused seamlessly into skin at the joints. And where his left eye should be, there's a small, steady lens instead, cycling through some private calculation with every step he takes. 3 of Meng Kuei's trained fighters move to intercept him at the same moment, and he handles all 3 without breaking stride. One goes down from a strike, so fast I don't fully register the motion. Another gets caught and set down, unconscious but unharmed, almost gently, like the effort of actually hurting him wasn't worth spending. The 3rd backs off entirely, weapon lowered, some animal part of his brain recognizing a threat too far beyond his weight class to challenge. Meng Kuei gets a hand on his knife before the man even looks at him, and he simply doesn't move to engage, not fear, something closer to disinterest. Like Meng Kuei isn't a threat so much as a piece of furniture in the way. He stops directly in front of me, and up close, the lens where his eye should be resolves into something more unsettling, not blank, not mechanical in the cold sense, but watching, calculating. The way I calculate the stress points in a piece of scrap before I know what it's going to become. You're the one, he says, and his voice carries an odd double quality, like there's a second, quieter voice layered underneath the first, synced almost perfectly. The engineer who builds shelter instead of weapons. I've heard about you in 3 different districts now. All of them describe the same thing: a man who could arm himself and chose to arm everyone else instead. Who are you? Before the flash, I built things too, he says, ignoring the question in favor of his own answer, which I'm starting to understand is simply how he operates. A defense contractor's prototype. An exoskeleton, meant to be worn, controlled by a neural interface I spent 3 years perfecting. I was holding it, wearing half of it, mid-calibration, when the sky broke. He flexes one plated arm, the joints articulating with a soft, precise hiss. It didn't give me a skill to use. It fused. I am the prototype now, and everything I've absorbed since has only made the design more complete. Absorbed. Engineers. Mechanics. Anyone whose gift runs toward building instead of hitting. I find them. I take what makes them useful, and I make it part of what I already am. His single lens narrows fractionally, something almost like genuine interest crossing whatever passes for his expression now. You're the first one in months who's built something worth taking without me having to break you first to get it. Around us, the workshop has gone dead silent. Dozens of people frozen mid-motion, watching a man walk through their gate and dismantle 3 trained fighters without visible effort. And I feel the full weight of every eye in the yard shift onto me, waiting to see what I do with a threat that isn't like anything I've faced before. You don't get to just take people, I say, and it comes out steadier than I feel. I don't take people who refuse. That's inefficient, and inefficiency isn't part of the design anymore. He tilts his head slightly, studying the reinforced gate, the outbuildings, the crude painted letters spelling out what we've called ourselves. This place, it's clever, adaptive, built by someone thinking in systems, not just individual fights. I respect that, genuinely, which is rarer for me than you'd think. Then respect it enough to leave. Something in his single lens flickers, not anger, something closer to mild disappointment. The way you might look at a promising student who's just given a wrong but understandable answer. "You're interested in my work," he says, still to himself as much as to me. "You built a device to disable an entire collar network at once. You improvised a magnetic trap that dropped a man 3 times your mass. You are, without question, the most efficient engineer I've encountered outside of myself. And you're wasting it one gestures, slow, taking in the whole workshop with one articulated hand. This. Shelter. Sentiment. Charity work with wrenches. It's not charity. It's the only thing that's kept any of these people alive. It's inefficient sentiment dressed up as strategy," he says, not unkindly, which somehow makes it worse. "But I find I'm curious what you'd become if that sentiment were properly channeled instead of scattered across dozens of small, low-value lives." "I'm not joining you," I say, before he can finish whatever offer he's building toward. "I didn't expect you to, not today." He steps back, unhurried. The way he arrived like time is simply a resource he has more of than the rest of us. "You're interesting, Chinamo. I'm giving you 9 days to reconsider, which is 9 days longer than I've given anyone else this year. Use them wisely. If your answer is still no when I return, I take what I came for regardless of your feelings about it, and I take it from whatever remains of this place once I'm finished proving how thoroughly your toys don't matter against something actually complete." He turns, unhurried, and walks back out through the gate he displaced on his way in, and the reinforced metal doesn't even settle back fully into shape behind him. Left bent at an angle that makes the whole structure look suddenly, painfully fragile. The workshop doesn't fully exhale until he's long out of sight, and even then, the silence that follows isn't relief, it's the particular quiet of people who've just watched their entire understanding of dangerous get rewritten in under 5 minutes. "We can't fight that," Manhwa says, finally, checking on the fighter who's still unconscious from the encounter, breathing but slow to wake. "Not straight up. Not with everything we've built here combined." "I know. So what's the plan?" "I don't have one yet." And admitting that out loud, standing in front of the wreckage of the gate and the still shaken fighters and Lin Wan's steady, waiting gaze, is harder than any fight I've been in since the depot pit. "We don't beat him by being stronger," I finally say. "We already know that's not on the table. We beat him the same way we've beaten everything else, by making sure the fight happens on ground that turns his advantages into disadvantages." That evening, we gather everyone. The workshop has not just fighters, everyone, because the plan I'm starting to sketch out needs hands, not muscle. Bo-wei, Xiao Wang, listening intently for once instead of skeptically. Xiao Yu, bracelet steady, watching me with the particular focus of someone determined to be useful when it matters most. "He's built for open combat," I say, spreading a rough map of the old factory's back sections across a workbench. "1-on-1, or 1 against many, in open ground, where his speed and reach make everything else irrelevant. We don't give him open ground." I trace a path through the abandoned assembly lines, the narrow maintenance corridors, the sections of the plant we've never bothered clearing because there was never a reason to use them. We turn the back half of this place into something he can't adapt to fast enough: choke points, collapsible sections, dead zones where his systems won't have room to move the way they're built to move. It costs us nearly everything we've got left in materials. It costs us 9 days of every other project we're running to build it properly. And if it's not enough, Manhwa says, quiet, not doubting so much as needing to hear the honest answer, then it's not enough, I say. But it's the only version of this fight where we're not just hoping he's slower than he looks. Nobody argues. Not really. There's a kind of grim, focused resolve that settles over the workshop in the hours that follow. The same resolve I remember from the night before Xiao Wang's raid, except heavier now. Because everyone in this yard has seen exactly what we're preparing to face, and none of them are pretending otherwise anymore. 9 days. That's what we've got. I look at the gate, still bent from a hand that barely tried, and start counting materials in my head, already knowing it isn't going to be enough. And already knowing we're going to build with what we have anyway. Because the alternative isn't a plan, it's just waiting to lose. 9 days doesn't feel long until you're the one trying to fill every hour of it with something that might keep people alive. By the end, the back half of the workshop doesn't look like a factory anymore. It looks like something out of a nightmare. An engineer would have narrow corridors built from salvaged shelving and stacked machinery, sections of floor rigged to drop 3 separate choke points where the ceiling's been weakened just enough to bring down on command. Dead zones wired with the last of our shock capacity. Waiting. Xiao Yu spends the final 2 days at my side without being asked, learning fast, hands steadier every hour, and on the last evening, he finishes wiring a trigger circuit entirely on his own, correctly, without needing me to check it twice. You built that clean, I tell him, meaning it. Had a good teacher, he says, and doesn't flinch when he says it, which feels like its own kind of victory separate from whatever's coming tomorrow. The smith arrives exactly on the 9th day, at the hour he promised, walking through what's left of the front gate with the same unhurried certainty as before. You built something, he says, pausing at the threshold, single lens sweeping across the visibly reinforced yard. Not strength. Structure. Interesting choice. You wanted to see what channeled sentiment looks like, I say? This is it. Something that might be genuine amusement flickers across his half-mechanical face. Then let's see if it holds up to more than a compliment. He doesn't rush the front line the way Shou Wang once did. He walks into the maze we built with the same calm confidence he's shown since the day he first displaced our gate, and for the first 30 meters. That confidence looks entirely earned. He moves through the narrow corridors faster than anything his size should move, plated arms adjusting angle and reach with fluid, calculated precision. Then he hits the first choke point, and the ceiling comes down. It doesn't stop him. It slows him 3, 4 seconds of digging himself clear of debris he could have avoided entirely in open ground. Seconds that in any other fight wouldn't matter. And in this one are the entire point. Meng Kuei holds the second junction, the one place in the maze where 3 corridors meet, and a fighter with real combat skill actually matters more than a trap. His arm's fully healed now, and he uses every bit of the reflexes and endurance the flash gave him to keep the smith's attention locked in one place for nearly a full minute, ducking, striking, retreating just far enough to bait another swing into a support column I've rigged to collapse on contact. It works once. The smith adjusts, learns, and the second time Meng Kuei tries the same feint. The smith reads it half a second early and catches him across the ribs with enough force to put him down hard against the wall. I'm fine, Meng Kuei grits out over the comm wires strung through the maze, before anyone can ask. Keep him moving. Don't let him think. Lin Wan's voice comes through next, steady despite everything happening around her position near the maze's 3rd junction. His plating's uniform everywhere except the left shoulder joint. There's a seam there that reads different from the rest, newer, less integrated. That's not original prototype. That's something he absorbed and grafted on later. It's weaker. How much weaker? Enough to matter, if you hit it right. He Ling holds the rear position, closest to the wounded, and it's her voice that cuts through next, tight with urgency. 2 of Shou Wang's people are down near the 2nd choke point. Structural collapse got them worse than planned. I need hands. Shou Wang doesn't wait for instructions. I hear him over the comm before I see him, voice rough, already moving. I'm closer. I've got them. The smith clears the 2nd choke point faster than the maze accounted for, adapting to the pattern of collapsing floors and narrowing corridors with a speed that makes my chest go cold. He's not just powerful, he's learning the maze in real time, cataloging every trick the moment it's used against him, exactly the way he warned me he would. He's 3 corridors from the open assembly floor where dozens of people are sheltering, and if he clears the maze before we're ready for him there, the fight becomes exactly the open, one-sided slaughter he was built for. I meet him at the last choke point before the open floor, the one place in the entire maze I haven't shown anyone else. Because it's built around a piece of technology I've been saving specifically for this moment, the fragment of Lord Ba's reinforced gauntlet tech, stolen and half understood, that I've spent 6 weeks quietly rebuilding into something new. You again, the smith says, almost fond, the way you'd greet a persistent student. Still no interest in joining properly? Still no. Then let's finish this the way it should be finished. He comes fast, faster than anything I've faced, and the device strapped across both forearms built from Ba Ye's stolen tech, my own accumulated understanding of every core I've ever harvested, and materials that shouldn't logically combine into anything functional hums to life with a whine that tells me it's already drawing more power than it was ever safely rated for. Lin Wan's voice cuts through the comm one more time. Left shoulder. Now, while he's committed to the strike, I don't have time to aim carefully. I have time to trust her, And I do. Angling the device's single discharge directly into the seam she identified, the newer, less integrated plating at his left shoulder, the one weak point in an otherwise complete design. The device fires, and the feedback comes back through my own arms like every nerve ending has been set on fire simultaneously. The same debt I paid the first time I harvested a core, except magnified. Compounded, the interest Meng Kuei warned me about finally coming due all at once. I don't fully see what happens next. I feel the recoil throw me backward into the corridor wall, hear a sound like metal tearing that isn't coming from me, and somewhere in the white noise flooding my vision, I register the smith's single lens flickering, dimming, the fluid precision of his movement suddenly, catastrophically stuttering. The rest happens without me fully conscious to see it. Meng Kuei, back on his feet despite the ribs, driving the final blow home while the smith's systems are still recalibrating from the damage. Xiao Yu, positioned exactly where I told him to be for exactly this moment, releasing the one controlled burst he spent 6 weeks learning to hold back, aimed and precise instead of panicked, adding just enough additional force to finish what the device started. When my vision clears enough to focus again, the smith is on the ground, plating scorched and cracked along the entire left side, motionless, the small lens where his eye should be gone dark. The cost becomes clear once the adrenaline fades enough to let me feel anything else. Xiao Wang doesn't make it. He Ling tells me later, gently as she can manage, that the second collapse near the choke point he ran into came down harder than the first, and by the time anyone reached him, there wasn't enough left of the structure holding him up to save. He got both of Ba Ye's former workers clear before it happened. That's the part everyone chooses to remember, the part Meng Kuei repeats twice, unprompted, like saying it out loud makes it weigh less. It doesn't make it weigh less, but it makes it mean something, and in this world, that's most of what anyone gets to hope for. 2 days later, once the wounded are stable and the maze has been partly dismantled back into ordinary walls, the workshop holds a gathering by the front gate. No ceremony, same as always. Just people standing together, saying a name out loud so it doesn't disappear into everything else this year has taken. Meng Kuei says Xiao Wang's name first, plainly, without softening it. He spent his last months trying to be someone worth the chance he was given. I don't think there's a better ending than that, for any of us. Nobody argues. 3 weeks after that, the workshop looks less like a battlefield and more like what it was always meant to become. Bose turned the welding shop into something closer to a proper workshop of its own, training 2 new arrivals who've never held a torch before. Wei's reinforced grip has become the model for half the workshop's gate mechanisms now, copied and adapted by people who've learned to build around what they have instead of wishing for something else. Xiao Yu's bracelet sits loose on his wrist most days now, more habit than necessity, and he started teaching the newest, youngest arrivals the same lesson I taught him: hands first, fear second, power somewhere after that, once you've earned enough control to trust it. Qin Hao lifts the whole toolbox on the first try, one afternoon, grinning at me like he's won something bigger than a small trick with a small power. Mom watches from the doorway, and for the first time since the towers, I see her laugh, not politely, not out of relief, just actually laugh, at her youngest son levitating a dented toolbox 2 inches off the ground like it's the funniest thing that's happened all year. Lord Ba, we hear eventually, never rebuilt anything close to what he lost. Whatever's left of him is somewhere south, small and irrelevant. A story people tell each other about a man who thought fear was the same thing as strength. The smith's remains sit disassembled in a corner of the workshop storage, studied carefully, cautiously, for anything worth understanding and nothing worth repeating. I don't touch the core inside it. Some debts, I've decided, aren't worth collecting twice. On a quiet evening, months after the sky first turned blue, I find myself sitting in the yard with a neighbor's bicycle turned upside down in front of me. A chain slipped off its gear. A problem so small and so ordinary that it feels almost unreal to be solving it. I don't reach for the blueprint vision this time. I don't need it. It's just a chain and a gear and a wrench that's been in my hand through everything this year has thrown at me. And I fix it the plain way, the slow way. The way I used to fix things back when the biggest problem in my life was a stuck brake caliper and a foreman yelling about the schedule. The kid it belongs to takes it back with both hands, thanks me twice, and rides off across the yard, laughing at nothing in particular. The way kids do when the world finally lets them be exactly that young again. I watch him go, wrench still loose in my hand, and somewhere behind me. The workshop keeps doing what it's always done since the day 4 of us walked through its gate looking for nothing more than somewhere the fires hadn't reached yet. It became a home. Not because I was the strongest thing in this city. Because I never tried to be, and it turned out, in the end, that was the only design that actually worked.